Guys, I'm really excited to do this video. This is the story of RitewAI, how I started it, where it comes from, who we serve, all of that good stuff. And as a disclaimer, again, this is not a sales channel. This is not meant to be a way of promoting our services. I mean, de facto wise and as a byproduct, it does naturally, but that's not the intention. The reason that I want to tell this story is really to illuminate, the challenges that are going on in the AI landscape, and more importantly, the way that this organization serves those challenges, what's been learned along the way. I feel like that's way more important, is just the things that I've learned, our organization has learned in, the building and creation of the platform that we have and the people that we serve. And so that's really what I'm aiming to accomplish within this video, is to just tell that story, and give you some food for thought around what it all means. So about 4 years ago, 2022, I was working for a very large Microsoft partner. I was in their Data and AI Center of Excellence. I was actually there as a data scientist, and because the Center of Excellence is a small team, and for those who don't know what a Center of Excellence is, you can I like this story because I think it's pretty interesting and also kind of illuminates it pretty well. I remember I was talking to a friend of mine at the time who was a barber, and I was explaining my job and what I do within the Center of Excellence. And he was like, "It's kind of like you guys are the Navy SEALs and supporting the Army, right?" And I'm not, like, I don't have any military background, so I don't know how accurate that really is. But our job in the Center of Excellence was to be this cross-functional strike force that essentially supported the different regions of the organization, because we were a global entity. So we would basically help accelerate whatever they were working on, support them. There's traditional functions of a Center of Excellence, and so those were the kind of things that we would work on. I kind of looked at us as like an innovation hub, and we therefore had access to kind of the bleeding edge of where technology was at the time. And this is pre ChatGPT, pre Copilot. This is when data science was still just data science. And so I remember this is a company that worked really closely with Microsoft. So I got to meet with Microsoft and their product team. And this is when they were coming out with Project Bonsai, which was an autonomous AI platform before, like I said, any of this GPT related stuff. And so, we got to kind of work with that. I was working with digital twins at the time, primarily Azure digital twins. So blending Azure digital twins, deep reinforcement learning, simulation engineering to create kind of these digital cognition machines that would, take in all the information for an organization and, map it out, and then use that reinforcement learning to kind of predict the next best action, or use optimal control theory to figure out how to maximize, for example, production on an assembly line, or minimize cost of expenses or something like that, right? Like that was kind of the general thing that we were trying to do with those softwares. And so I was placed on a project where we were doing that for a major global logistic firm. So doing it at a very large scale, and it was meant to just be a proof of concept, more or less. And as I started to learn as we went through the project, the way that it was presented when the project was initially sold and discussed was not what we could really deliver. Like that, whatever was sold, like it just was very either technically impossible, which I don't like that word, but very technically difficult to accomplish what we were trying to accomplish. And also in the timeline that we were trying to accomplish it was practically not realistic. And so I remember us going and meeting with Microsoft to talk about this, and their team literally said, "Yeah, this is not. You guys are kind of screwed, for lack of a better expression. Telling the team that we just needed to start doing damage control. And I remember that, and I remember, my manager and the rest of our team, really, really smart, incredibly successful people. And we all just basically had to buckle down for a couple months. I'm pretty sure I was working like 14 to 16 hours a day, and I was still in school at the time. So it was a pretty tough, little bit. And it really opened my eyes to, oh, I'm gonna get ground down in this role, and that's really kind of what the horizon was starting to look like. And more importantly, it was starting to look like that politically as well, because in this organization there was a lot of knowing people to move up the ladder, and there's just a lot of for lack of expression, bullshit that you would need to go through to propel in your career. And I had always knew that starting a business was something that was definitely in the cards for me. I just didn't think it would be something that I would do, right out of the gate, more or less. And at the same time, I was learning that, though this Microsoft partner had basically backdoor access into the Microsoft product team, and they were able to communicate with them and have access to the latest and greatest, and take that to their customers and all that kind of stuff. I realized that was really happening at the most top echelon of the ecosystem, and really just for enterprise clients. And I know in having conversations with the team that was involved in that project, it was a big realization to me that basically 90% or more of the companies out there, particularly ones that are smaller or not as involved in the Microsoft stack, would never have access to that. And it was almost like I had a view into the future of their organizations, and seeing, I don't know if this is years away, months away, days away, but without you knowing that, right, it is really kind of, seeing the landmines and knowing where they are in the field, and the people walking through it have no idea. And so that was a big realization for me, to just be like, oh crap, like there's just so many companies out there that really have no idea what's happening, what's coming, how to operate at the bleeding edge, and all that kind of stuff. And so I made a decision that that's how I wanted to contribute to the world, through to society. That's what I wanted to bring into the world economically, as a vehicle and a way to support these other companies in taking the best from the bleeding edge, and incorporating it into their, not just their 5, 10, 15-year plan, but into the now, and using this stuff in the now, and building an organization around that bleeding edge, and making the most of it, where the opportunities lie. And that's what really kickstarted InnoServe, which is actually the corporation name for RitewAI. So RitewAI is our operating name. It's our brand. But the actual holding, the name of the company originally was InnoServe, and that was really built around riding the waves of change, in business through innovation. That was really kind of the goal of that. This was actually the original. This hat is very dirty. This was actually the original logo for the company, and you probably can't see it super well, but there's a little surfer guy chilling out in there. So that was the original, couple hours on a weekend during the holidays Canva project, to make that happen. And so that's kind of what started things, and that's obviously what really kickstarted the journey of this organization, and me kind of doing what I do with it, more or less. So we started with, really just kind of doing innovation consulting, very general, like super general, to, hey, like, what's the best CRM out there? What's the best, meeting software, right? Like, just, kind of all over the place. And I was making content around that. And no, it just wasn't really catching fire. I think it was very ambiguous, and difficult to comprehend for smaller businesses, because what is innovation? Like, how are you defining that? Like, what results is that producing? All that kind of stuff, right? And so it took about a year, for our first customer to come online. And that customer, I kind of started as a freelancer, in building the organization, right? And just being there on my own. And so that customer was a client out of Germany who, and this is, probably a couple months after ChatGPT went live, so early 2023. I think ChatGPT might be a bit older than that. I can't remember. But they reached out, over a freelancing platform that I work with, and we're like, hey, like, I want to build this chatbot. I've tried it a couple times. It's not been very successful. Would you give it a go? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, that's, and for me, it was, kind of really a dream scenario, because, yes, innovation as a whole was something that I deeply cared about and wanted to move forward in a meaningful way. But I'm a data scientist. Like, AI is my world. It's my labor of love, whatever you want to call it. And so I was like, wow, I get to build AI software for someone else, that really needs it to move their business forward. Like, that is incredible. That is literally my dream. And it was just so exciting. And so that's kind of how I kicked off my summer of 2023, was putting together, that project, getting that started, and starting to build, which was, really honestly my dream. Like, I just was like, wow, I get to build these kinds of solutions for customers. Like, that is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And of course, it's not all smooth sailing from there. Building AI software during that time was insane. Absolutely insane compared to where it is today. There was no playbook. There was no anything. You couldn't. It was very hard to find resources online as to what is the best practice. How do you do this? Like, it was a lot of just figuring it the fuck out, for lack of a better expression. And I just remember learning so much, and not just about the technology. Like, this was back when you're using GPT 3.5, and the client spoke German, because they were a company that was based in Germany. So he wanted the chatbot to be multilingual. And so I had to basically reprogram the whole thing to be in German, so that its default language was German. And then its second language would be English, so that you could talk to it in both languages. And I just learned so much about the models and how they work and their behavior, and everything like that. And then I remember the end of the project. Like, this project went on way longer than it should, and there was just, so many things that were happening with it that were not great, to be completely honest. I had a really great relationship with the client, but I think he just was like, this is not working, kind of thing. And so I remember I published it, got it deployed, ready for testing. I've done oodles of work to make it happen. And he's like, well, it's stupid. It doesn't answer these questions that I have. And I'm like, well, we didn't give it any information on how to answer those questions. Like, you're asking it questions that aren't in the 1 to 12 FAQ documents that you have. And, so we had that conversation. And then I remember he's like, oh, I have an idea. Like, let's go on YouTube and scrape every single mention of our company and the YouTube videos there, because there's so many how-to guides online. And so we took all of that information, pulled all the transcripts. I remember running like 4 or 5 hour jobs in the middle of the day on the weekend, to get all of those transcripts pulled out, and then converted all of them into knowledge to put into the chatbot. Loaded it all up, made it super, super quote unquote smart. And of course, it got worse. There was differing opinions. You asked it questions and it would come back with, crap that it pulled off of the internet, because that's literally what we were giving it. And, that was kind of the end of that experiment, because more or less there was just not enough data to give the answers that he was looking for when talking with the chatbot. And so yeah, it was an incredibly great learning experience, of course. And more importantly, the themes that came out of that were, I mean, I don't know how many times people have to say it, like garbage in, garbage out, but this is really where you got to see, like, yeah, without a well curated knowledge base, this thing is stupid. Like, it doesn't know anything about your company, what you want it to do. And this was for a basic customer service chatbot, right? It was meant to just answer questions like, what is this company, and stuff like that, right? And so that was a big learning lesson in just, oh wow, like the level of your data is going to dictate the quality of this. And of course, that's remained a theme now, even 3 years into our company's development. So if we skip ahead a little bit, of course, my background was also in Microsoft technologies. Like, I've been an Azure data scientist for 4 years, Azure AI engineer for about the same. And then, of course, worked with Fabric when it first came out, and have built, a capability around that. And obviously the Microsoft business applications world as well. That's where my background in Copilot Studio, Dynamics, Power Platform, all that stuff was all there. And so, I started taking these learnings from these AI projects and pumping them out into the greater Microsoft ecosystem of just, hey, like, here's what I'm learning. This is what I've been able to do with Microsoft stuff. This is what's not working. This is what is. And so I remember, going to some of these Microsoft conferences and talking about that and asking questions and just, kind of bringing up these topics. And, people just started to kind of gravitate towards me as to having all these answers about AI. I mean, for those who know me through this ecosystem, I've probably been called the AI guy or the AI guru more times than I want to admit. And I don't know if that's a really good title to have. I don't really know what that means. It was just something that obviously I cared deeply about and was building a company around. And so I was sharing what I was learning and, all that kind of stuff. And people really resonated with that because I was talking about it from the lens of, there's a certain way to go about doing things. And, that's obviously where the name comes from, right? Actually, the name for RitewAI came from an article I wrote probably 2 or 3 years ago, where I was talking with a colleague around, kind of the 3 axioms that I had learned about what makes an AI project successful. And somewhere in there, I think I mentioned like doing AI the right way. And that's where RitewAI, which is never how people pronounce it. I don't know why. I think it's intuitive to read, but that's my own opinion. That's really where that came from. And that's why the company name shifted from InnoServe to RitewAI. And the reason for I'm looking at the wrong side. The reason for the people-centered AI part is what I was also learning and discovering through these client projects is that all of these solutions are built around the human experience, right? I know we're in the world of AI agents now, and we all look at like, am I replacing this job function? Like, who's going to lose their job because of this AI solution? And frankly, I still don't believe that. I mean, yes, there are people's jobs that are dramatically changing. And, for those whose jobs are becoming 90% automated, I can see and understand why companies would remove the overhead associated with their employments or transition them in some kind of way. And so I'm not surprised by any of that. I don't necessarily condone that philosophy, because really, like, where people-centered AI comes from is any AI system, whether it's completely asynchronous or not, requires a human in the loop, right? Like that's a non-negotiable, because even if you have, I have AI agents that run completely autonomously and fill my inbox up with information, and I don't have to do anything for them. But when that system, for whatever reason, needs to evolve or needs to be updated or isn't working the way that I want it to, who the heck do you think is going to update it? It's not going to update itself. And even if it updates itself, it's still going to need some kind of human intervention. It's like like manufacturing solutions or equipment, like, a bulldozer, for example. Like, sure, the feature capabilities are going to get more and more autonomous, but they're still going to require, and that's, the interesting thing, right? Is, maybe it moves from being 90% manual to 90% automated, which means a human's going to spend 100% of their energy on the 10% that requires human intervention. And then that's going to continue to grow. And so that's really that loop that's being created, right? Many have heard me talk about this story. Like, one of my favorite examples is with the healthcare industry. You have radiologists that use AI to scan thousands of images for, brain tumors and things like that. And the AI is going to have ability to process that information much better than a human can. Like, no human's going to be able to process 1,000 brain scans in an hour the same way an AI engine is going to. And so that obviously releases a lot of burden from the doctor. And so the doctor can learn from the AI, like what patterns it's picking up and stuff like that. So the doctor's learning from the AI. But then, of course, the AI is also not aware of everything. It can't be. It's trained on the past, not the future. And so the doctor is going to be informing and teaching the AI, like, hey, here's the nuance of this case. Here's the nuance of this case. Here's the nuance of this case. And so you get this loop, right, where the human is improving the system, or the AI software, and the AI is improving the human, and the two of them are cyclically improving each other. So to me, that's part of why you really can't have the existence of a full-fledged automated system or company that has zero human involvement. If anything, that's probably a recipe for disaster, because given the fact that, machines are hackable, humans are much less hackable. If that thing goes off the rails and it's got all the keys to the kingdom, that's not going to be my company. That's all I'm going to say. So that's really what kind of jump started, what as RitewAI today, right? Building AI solutions through the Microsoft AI stack, working with companies to be that innovation arm, be that, R&D with results, right? Like, we're not building shit just to make cool toys. Like, we're building stuff to make people's lives better, to improve the overall company infrastructure. Even just for ourselves, we've built tons of solutions that are literally critical business infrastructure, and we can't operate without them. That's our goal, is to, be able to raise the awareness of organizations so that they understand and are informed enough to know how to use this stuff effectively, assist in building it, because, it's without the right foundation in place to build an AI initiative, you can very easily find yourself just finding that this is a waste of time, and it's definitely not, right. And I think that's the concern that I have for a lot of companies today is, having one bad pilot and saying, oh, let's put it on the back burner and worry about it in 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years from now, your company may not exist because of not leveraging AI in the most meaningful way. And I don't mean that with any bad tone. It's literally just, you look at how companies are competing today, and frankly, this is why the parallels with the Industrial Revolution are so clear and obvious, right? Because back then, I kind of look at it, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, like, the difference now is becoming, are you driving your company like it's a horse and buggy, or are you riding in it like it's a Ford Model T, right? Like, it's night and day difference. And to ignore that and put your head in the sand is not a solution. It's actually just proliferating the problem and potentially creating the fate of your organization in a way that probably nobody really wants. So all in all, that's kind of what I wanted to share, right? Like that's the story of this company, and kind of how I went about constructing it, and what I think it means to the larger ecosystem and why that's important. Of course, ask me any questions. I mean, this is my company. This is the story of it. This is what I love to talk about. And I love what we're doing. I love the team that we have and the organization that we've built and where we're going, and all this other stuff. So I'm really excited to see, what RitewAI looks like 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now, 2 decades from now, whatever that may be. But yeah, I hope you got something out of this video. And of course, message if you have any questions, comments, or thoughts. But yeah, that's all I wanted to share. So take care.